The 2020s have been an interesting time to be a Superman fan. In October of 2021, DC Comics announced that Superman's iconic motto of truth, justice, and the American way was changing to better reflect the stories they wanted to tell. Instead, going forward, the man of tomorrow would fight for truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. Critics of this choice denounced the phrase, claiming that Superman was going woke. In July of 2023, My Adventures with Superman debuted, featuring an anime-inspired look, a magical girl transformation, and the reveal that this version of Superman's usual love interest, Lois Lane, was Korean. Internet commentators, of course, criticized the decision for bringing politics into their superhero media. Most recently, in December of 2024, the trailer for James Gunn's Superman was released, and while many fans, myself included, were excited to see a fresh take on the character, others were worried the film had become too political, especially after Gunn stated that the beaten and bloodied Clark we see at the start of the trailer represents our country. Repeatedly, readers and viewers have called out what they see as politics being forced into superhero stories. What I think all these criticisms miss, however, is that superhero comics have always been political. Part of what makes them so interesting is that while their characters might be superhuman, their problems are ordinary. They can and often do respond to the issues of the day, Superman included. Whether we're looking at his origins in the 1930s as a superheroic embodiment of the New Deal, or his modern interpretation as an edgy teenage labor organizer, trust me, it's actually really cool, I promise, we'll get to it later. Superman is at his best when he takes a firm stand against injustice. So let's look at Superman's origins and his evolution to see if we can better understand the Man of Steel, what he stands for, and why the best Superman stories, the ones that really get to the core of who he is as a character, are political. Our story begins not on a dying alien world, but in a working-class neighborhood of Cleveland, Ohio. The year is 1938, and in an attempt to make something of themselves in the midst of the Great Depression, two young men are about to change the face of American popular culture forever. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, sons of Jewish immigrants, fans of sci-fi and pulp fiction, and creative partners since their time on the school paper, have spent the past 7 years workshopping a character. In 1931, he made his first appearance as a bald, telepathic villain. By 1933, he had started to come into focus as a heroic man of action, akin to one of Siegel and Schuster's other collaborations, Slam Bradley. This version wearing a t-shirt and pants as he fights criminals. The first superhero appeared in earnest, according to Siegel and Schuster, after a sleepless night and feverish day of work at Schuster's apartment. After 4 more years of trying to pitch the character to a publisher, he finally made his debut in June of 1938 in Action Comics #1. Superman had arrived. In his first appearance, the broad strokes of Superman's iconography are there, including his alien origin, his double life as mild-mannered reporter Clark Kent, and of course, his love interest, Lois Lane. However, Superman still had some growing to do before he would become the iconic character that we know today. In his early adventures, he can't fly, or use heat vision, or freeze breath. Instead, he can leap 1/8 of a mile, hurdle a 20-story building, raise tremendous weights, and run faster than an express train. And I think most interestingly, this version of Superman lacks his iconic epithet, the Man of Steel. He's not a godlike figure or a symbol of hope. Instead, he's a working-class hero who is willing to get his hands dirty in order to protect those who need it. He is the champion of the oppressed. But in order to understand how this early version of Superman used his stories to represent his creator's views, we first need to understand the political climate of the 1930s. Domestically, the American economy was in shambles following the stock market crash of 1929, and one man seemed to have a plan to fix things: Franklin Delano Roosevelt. As president, FDR offered the American people a chance at reclaiming prosperity, a new deal if they were willing to reject the laissez-faire attitude toward the market which had been espoused by his predecessors. Instead, working-class Americans had to unite against those who had taken advantage of them. In his 1936 address at Madison Square Garden, President Roosevelt laid out his enemies as he saw them.
We had to struggle with the old enemies of peace: business and financial monopoly, speculation, reckless banking, class antagonism, sectionalism, war profiteering.
Following his debut in 1938, Superman quickly took up this struggle as well, becoming, as Martin Lund called him in his book Reconstructing the Man of Steel, a super New Dealer. In Action Comics number 2, Superman takes on a war profiteer who is stoking a conflict in South America. Forcing the arms dealer to see the horrors his products create firsthand, Superman ends the war quickly, declaring to the two opposing generals that it's obvious you've been fighting only to promote the sale of munitions. In issue number 3, he confronts Thornton Blakely, a greedy businessman who allowed a coal mine he owns to become so unsafe a cave-in crippled one of his employees. Superman, in retaliation, leads the owner and a group of his party guests into the mine and then stages a cave-in. With his own life at risk, Blakely admits to seeing the error of his ways, and Superman goes on to rescue the party. Following their escape, Blakely vows to change his company's treatment of its workers, and Superman, now in the guise of Clark Kent, expresses hope that this policy will be a permanent one. For if it isn't, you can expect another visit from Superman. Later in the run, a particularly notable example comes from Action Comics number 8. After spending time with a teenage gang, Superman acknowledges the environmental effects that led to the boys' criminality, declaring, "It's not entirely your fault that you're delinquent. It's these slums, your poor living conditions. If there was only some way I could remedy it." Seeing a headline detailing the government's decision to erect modern housing projects following the destruction of a city by a cyclone, Superman puts a plan into action. He'll get all of the people and their valuables out and then destroy the slums, forcing the local government to put in splendid housing conditions. These are real problems. They're not necessarily real solutions. In the issue's last panel, the local police chief tells Clark Kent that while officially they're after Superman for his actions, off the record, he believes Superman did a splendid thing. Repeatedly, throughout his early appearances, Superman earns his moniker as the champion of the oppressed. By using his powers to fight for the disadvantaged and against the wealthy, Superman takes on those who had caused the downfall of the American economy just a decade earlier. Like FDR, he stood against the old enemies of peace and knew that to build a better America, it had to be better for all. Taking all of this into account, it's undeniable that Superman's stories were infused with political commentary from the very beginning. However, Superman didn't just advocate for the rights of the oppressed at home. By 1940, he had taken his crusade international. In a short story Siegel and Schuster wrote for Look magazine, titled How Superman Would End the War. In it, we see the Man of Steel cross enemy lines, disable guns and planes, and then grab Germany's leader by the collar. Whisking him away to the Soviet Union, Superman then abducts Stalin as well, before bringing both to stand trial before the League of Nations. Now, you might be wondering how this is political. Isn't standing against Nazis just a thing that every American should do? I mean, I think you're right, but you really have to take into account the timing here. As I mentioned earlier, How Superman Would End the War was published in February of 1940, over a year before the United States would enter World War II. In fact, just 1 month before the world heard Superman say, "I'd like to land a strictly non-Aryan sock on your jaw," 88% of Americans opposed the idea of declaring war against the Axis powers. To have an American character created by the sons of Jewish immigrants and clad in red and blue take such a firm stance against fascism was certainly a political act, and it defined Superman as a political character. Really, any way you look at it, there's no denying that Siegel and Schuster's initial run on Superman is clearly politically progressive for the time. As Siegel would later tell the BBC, he conceived of Superman in response to the rise of fascism as a crusader, if at least a fictional one. And this early Superman is a crusader for the oppressed, a reformer of the system who stood up to enemies both foreign and domestic. As Superman would evolve over time, this core concept would remain true even when he realized that the enemies were in his own backyard. By 1946, less than 10 years after Superman had first appeared on the pages of Action Comics #1, he had grown beyond the confines of the printed page. With the first episode premiering on February 12, 1940, the Adventures of Superman radio show expanded both Superman's reach and his lore. It's thanks to the radio show that key elements of our modern understanding of Superman, such as his weakness to kryptonite and his ability to fly, exist at all. One thing which remained unchanged, however, was his sense of justice and his political bent. With World War II over, the show's creators, including producer Bob Maxwell, needed new villains for the Man of Steel to face. Partnering with journalists like Stetson Kennedy, the show found its enemies in the hooded guise of the Ku Klux Klan. In June of 1946, the show aired the first part of what would become a 16-episode series known as the Clan of the Fiery Cross. In it, a Chinese-American boy named Tommy Lee joins Jimmy Olsen's baseball team as its new star pitcher, after replacing Chuck Riggs, the team's old pitcher and nephew to Metropolis Klan chapter head Matt Riggs. The Lee family become targets of the Klan's hatred. In order to protect the Lees and all of Metropolis from this hateful ideology, Superman begins a battle against the Klan. Now, in preparation for this video, I actually went and listened to the whole storyline for the first time here on YouTube. It actually holds up surprisingly well, and while it might have some 40s kind of cheesiness, my favorite part is that Jimmy loves to use the insult sorehead.
I have all the soreheads for 2 cents.
That makes you a bum loser and a sorehead.
Of course he knows it. He's just talking like a sorehead.
Overall, it holds up surprisingly well, and it's still shockingly and maybe saddeningly relevant. Well, today, I'd like to think that most Americans can see the Klan for what they truly are. In the 1940s, the Klan was making a concerted effort to build a mythology for themselves as protectors of Americans' morality and a critical American institution. When it came time for Superman to face off against his own version of the Klan, however, he did not mince words in his critique, telling Jimmy Olsen,
"The Klan of the Fiery Cross is made up of intolerant bigots, Jim. They don't judge a man in the decent American way by his own qualities. They judge him by what church he goes to and by the color of his skin."
I think this phrasing is particularly notable. By contrasting the racist beliefs of the Klan with the decent American way, Superman is stating plainly that the Klan isn't just immoral, they're un-American. In fact, the radio show makes this point time after time. When Jimmy and Daily Planet editor Perry White are captured by the Klan, Perry denounces their xenophobia, saying,
"The nation was founded by foreigners and built by foreigners. Everyone here either came from another country or is descended from folks who did. Don't you ever read your history, you stupid bigot?"
And it was probably the show's most damning critique. Our heroes draw comparisons between the Klan and Superman's old enemies, the Nazis, when Perry says,
"Every country has its lame brains and diseased minds, Jim. Germany had the Nazis. We've got the Klan of the Fiery Cross."
As a side note, Perry White rocks throughout basically this entire story arc. This is like officially a Perry White stan account. Over and over and over again, the show and Superman make their distaste for the hateful and the intolerant known. Superman is an immigrant who has declared himself a defender of truth and justice, and by denouncing the Klan as un-American, he shatters any mythology they might have sought to build as protectors of American morality. Superman, at his core, is a good person who uses his strength to protect those who need it. And it's because of this that he can recognize that at their core, the Klan are not. But our story doesn't end in 1946. Instead, we have to leap 73 years in a single bound to October 2019, when writer Gene Luen Yang and artist duo Guri Hiru adapted the original radio show into the phenomenal graphic novel Superman Smashes the Klan. Set in the same year the Clan of the Fiery Cross storyline aired, Yang's rendition of the tale clearly takes strong inspiration from the original. The plot remains largely the same, the central characters, Jimmy, Tommy, Matt Riggs, and of course Superman, are all there, and they even keep Jimmy's love for Sorehead. So what does this new interpretation of the original storyline really add? The answer is that Yang and Gurihiru are able to take subtext from the original story and make it text. They're able to rework elements that were already there in ways that draw out new meaning. One early example is how this adaptation draws direct connections between the white supremacy of the Klan and the white supremacy of the Nazis. While this connection existed in the original storyline, Yang makes it blatantly obvious from the very beginning. The first villain we meet in Superman Smashes the Klan is the self-proclaimed Avenger of the Master Race, the Atom Man. Clad in a green cloak with a red and black swastika emblazoned on the chest, the Atom Man is imposing until Superman arrives and shows us just what he thinks of Nazis. Stating that he is not the Superman, our hero rejects comparison to Nazi ideas. After the Atom Man is handed over to the authorities, he doesn't return as an antagonistic force. However, Yang and Gurihiru use his initial appearance to draw comparisons between his hateful beliefs and those espoused by the piece's true villains, the Clan of the Fiery Cross. Throughout the book, we see mysterious scientists performing experiments on the green rock that powered the Atom Man's suit, kryptonite. Eventually, it's revealed that the Klan was secretly financing these scientists in order to build a weapon to defeat Superman. In the story's climax, Matt Riggs, the leader of the now defeated Metropolis chapter, uses this weapon against our hero. Clad in his own green robes, with his own black and red symbol, Gurihiru draw visual parallels between Matt Riggs, the Avenger of the Klan, and the Atom Man, Avenger of the Nazis. Yang's dialogue even brings this connection into greater focus. During their fight, Riggs tells Superman, "Even I must concede that you are the true superior race," echoing the Atom Man's comments about the master race. Once again rejecting this idea, Superman, the man of tomorrow, says that while he may not share ancestry or a common past with the Lees, they are united by a shared tomorrow, one worth fighting for. Superman rejects the Klan's call for a return to a past America, one which is fueled by white supremacy, and chooses to look ahead to a brighter future. In this way, Yang and Gurihiru use the unique strengths of the comics medium, its ability to draw both verbal and visual parallels, in order to solidify the connections between these two forms of hate. Furthermore, Yang uses his story to recontextualize two elements of Superman's mythos that have their origins directly in the original radio show, kryptonite and his expanded power set. Early on in Superman Smashes the Klan, Yang's Superman is more akin to the one we see in Siegel and Schuster's original run. He can run at great speed, along power lines, a visual detail taken directly from the Siegel and Schuster comics, leap long distances, and has super strength, but not much beyond that. This Superman, like Siegel and Schuster's, feels more like a powerful version of a normal man, not an alien. As Roberta Lee, the Lee's younger daughter, puts it in the comic, humans run, you just run faster. Humans jump, you just jump higher. Humans lift stuff, you just lift heavier stuff. He also hasn't encountered another creation of the radio show, kryptonite. As Yang introduces the elements to his story, he uses them to draw out deeper meaning. After he first encounters kryptonite, the rock which smells like ash and rot and something else, something so familiar it brings tears to my eyes, the rock which serves as a reminder of his destroyed alien homeworld, Clark feels the effects lingering even hours later. Going to the Daily Planet's restroom to clear his head, Gurihiru utilize another unique strength of their medium, the page-turn reveal. Building suspense through the final third of the page, the reader is made to feel some of Clark's own shock and fear when they turn the page and see not Clark in the mirror, but an alien staring back. This is actually how Yang and Gurihiru choose to introduce one of the key themes of their retelling: assimilation and belonging. Yang has explicitly spoken about why this is so important to his take on the character, telling The Hollywood Reporter, "The reason Superman tries to be a perfect citizen is because he knows he's an alien. Siegel and Schuster knew all of this. They were children of immigrants. They put all of this in the character." After the introduction of kryptonite, the reader is treated to two manifestations of Clark's fear of being outed as an alien. The first is an alien couple that only he can see. They claim to be his parents and ask repeatedly why he holds himself back. The answer to this question actually comes in the second manifestation of Clark's fear: his limited powers. Throughout the book, we see flashbacks to Clark's pre-Superman years, and specifically moments when the appearance of his full abilities inspired fear in those around him. In the last of these flashbacks, Clark has a conversation with a circus strongman who tells him that in order to be accepted, he should develop a costume. The more colorful, the better. Now, obviously, this is connected to Clark's literal costume, one that was actually inspired by the outfits that strongmen wore. But I think that in Superman Smashes the Klan, Clark also has a second, more symbolic costume: his limitations. By holding himself back, Clark appears more human and less alien, more akin to the world's strongest strongman than something anyone should have to fear. This performance of weakness is its own kind of costume, something Clark doesn't even realize he's wearing, something colorful and acceptable, but not necessarily true to his lived experience. Roberta, who deals with her own issues finding her place in Metropolis, and who serves as Clark's narrative foil, points this out to him, stating, "The truth is, you can do things that are entirely different from what humans can do, right? And you hold back because you're afraid that if people find out, they'll stop calling you Superman." In order to reach his full potential, Clark also has to embrace his full self, both human and alien. Following his conversation with Roberta, Clark embraces both sets of parents, and his mother tells him, "You are a part of them, son, and you always will be. But you'll always be part of us, too." By accepting this fact, Clark is able to shed his costume of limitations and his fear of rejection, instead embracing his full self and his full power set. Yang uses the evolution of Superman's powers from Siegel and Schuster's original comics to what's present in the radio show to mirror Clark's journey of self-acceptance. Now, some of you might be ready to dismiss all of this as simply an older characterization of the Man of Steel. Modern Superman fights high-concept sci-fi villains and alien invasions, not white supremacy and corrupt landlords, right? And even I am willing to admit that the villains of today's Superman stories are more abstract, but I would argue that this abstraction doesn't take us away from the core message of those stories. As Grant Morrison, writer of All-Star Superman, puts it, "Superman has the same problems we do, but on a Paul Bunyan scale." Even these less on-the-nose stories are still representative of someone who is struggling for progress. And to demonstrate that, let's talk about one of my favorite Superman stories, Superman for All Seasons. Superman for All Seasons by Jeff Loeb, with art by Tim Sale, is an all-time great Superman comic, an origin that shows a young Clark coming into his own and really discovering what it means to be Superman. It's got a fantastic story told over the course of a year, beautiful line work, and some frankly incredible watercolor art. Seriously, if you haven't read Superman for All Seasons, you really should go do that right now. I'll wait. It's a great representation of the character and a great jumping on point to really understand his appeal. Okay, now that you're back, what I really want to talk about is Summer. Told by Lois Lane, Summer gives us a great understanding of how Superman continues to champion the everyman into the modern day. At the start of summer, we see two big action set pieces. In one, Superman grabs a missile headed for Metropolis and hurls it into space. In the other, he tracks down the submarine responsible for the attack, lifts it out of the ocean, and delivers it to the local military. In both scenes, Tim Sale's art really sells that sense of scale. He uses double-page spreads, in which the vast majority of the layout are taken up by the weapons of war, to make one thing abundantly clear. These are not ordinary problems, and they're not solved by an ordinary man. After laying down the submarine, Superman confronts Lex Luthor, telling him that the missile and the submarine's guidance system were both manufactured by LexCorp, and that if he learns Lex is responsible, Lex will have to answer to him. When Lex attempts to protest, Superman flies off with Lois Lane in the middle of his sentence. Once they land, Lois says, "Bit of advice, Superman, will all those people down there look up to you, even adore you, nobody, and I mean nobody, speaks to Lex Luthor the way you do." In response, Superman simply says, "It's about time somebody did." This is such a small interaction, but I think it really nails just why Superman and Lex Luthor are such iconic enemies, why they really get under each other's skin. Superman can't stand Lex because Lex thinks he's above his fellow man, and Lex can't stand Superman because he reminds him that he isn't. For all of his wealth, his technology, his power, Lex Luthor is just a man, and not a particularly good one at that. He's possessive of Metropolis, and yet will sacrifice its citizens like pawns in order to further his goals. Superman, on the other hand, is extremely powerful, and yet uses that strength to lift others up. To paraphrase Lois Lane, he can do anything he wants to, and he decides to be a hero. It's this decision that really shows that even in the modern day, Superman is still fighting for the little guy, to remind the rich and powerful that they're not gods amongst men, to champion the defenseless. It's this choice to do good that makes him super in the first place. Alright, I have to come clean about something. I lied to you earlier. I said modern Superman fights high-concept sci-fi villains and alien invasions, not white supremacy and corrupt landlords, right? And frankly, that wasn't entirely true. To understand the new direction that Superman is going, and to understand why I'm so excited by this new direction, we need to look at Absolute Superman. And to understand Absolute Superman, we need to first talk about Absolute Batman. First announced in July of 2024, the Absolute Universe offers a fresh take on DC's classic heroes. Spearheaded by writer Scott Snyder, best known for his work on the New 52's Batman, the Absolute Universe reimagines the heroes of DC Comics, asking who they would be if their circumstances were changed, how they're different, and, more pertinently for our discussion, how they're the same. In an interview with Owen Likes Comics here on YouTube, Snyder explained his original idea behind the Absolute line, saying,
especially with the Absolute line, the only way to do it would be if creators came in with really strong ideas about how to take the hero and make them someone that was even more exciting to you.
Looking at his own work in the Absolute Universe, however, I think Snyder's strongest thesis statement for the whole line comes in Absolute Batman number 4. In this issue, a young Bruce Wayne and his father Thomas, in this universe a teacher, are working on a science project, a bridge inspired by, of course, a bat. Thomas tells Bruce that what matters most is that the project demonstrates what's special about a bat at its core. Confused, Bruce asks how you can ever really know what something is at its core. Thomas responds by explaining that after his father died of a heart attack when he was a child, all he ever wanted to do was become a doctor, a surgeon. But when Martha became pregnant before he applied to med school, he had to reassess what his life would become. He had to determine who he was, who he wanted to be, and why. He explains, "What I realized was that my desire to be a doctor was really to prevent other kids from feeling what I felt that morning. As a teacher, though, I could make kids feel safe by preparing them for the world. Maybe in some other life, I am a doctor. But in this one, teaching gives me a way of doing that core thing. I think this exchange is really key to understanding the point of the absolute universe. Like Thomas, all of these characters have found themselves in circumstances that change the path they're going down, that move them away from the characters we know and love. Whether it's being raised in hell or working class, these characters are different, and yet, deep down, at their core, they're still the same people. They still have to determine what drives them and how they can do that core thing, how they can find what makes them special. With that in mind, I think we have to ask, what makes Superman special? Who is he at his core? In Absolute Superman, Jason Aaron and Rafa Sandoval give us our answer. Keeping with the crux of the absolute universe, their Superman is not like the one we know. He was raised on Krypton, not Earth. He's young and inexperienced. His powers are at least partially tied to his suit and are able to be depleted. And yet, even with all this change, he still feels true to both Siegel and Schuster's original interpretation of Superman and his evolution over the years. In Absolute Superman #1, we meet Kal-El at a diamond mine in Brazil. The migrant workers who labor in its depths recently discovered a pocket of asbestos, but when they reported the danger to their employers, they were told to keep digging. Using his superhuman powers, Superman does the miners' work for them, protecting them from the dangers of the mine, but putting himself in the path of Lazarus Corp. Superman has been disrupting their operations around the world, from India to Mexico, Belarus to Vietnam, and beyond. Wherever the working class of the world are knocked down, he's there to pick them back up. He's not opposing corrupt landlords or individual business people, but instead stands against something out of a cyberpunk novel, a mega corporation. Despite this magnification of the scale of his foe, however, this still calls back to Superman's origins as a working class Great Depression era hero. He's still a champion of the oppressed, just this time, as Grant Morrison would put it, at a Paul Bunyan scale. Now you might be wondering why this version of Superman really feels any kinship with the working people of Earth. Didn't I say that he was born and raised on Krypton? Isn't that what makes him different? The answer comes in Aaron's reinterpretation of core elements of Superman's mythos. As is explained in issue #1, in the Absolute Universe, Krypton was divided into a very strict social hierarchy. Scientists at the top, middle managerial classes, and at the lowest rank, laborers. To mark these differences, the classes were made to wear crests, and the traditional Superman symbol in this universe is not a symbol of hope or a crest of the House of El. Instead, it's a mark of the laboring class, the people of steel. In this way, Aaron extends Superman's iconic moniker to all of the working people of Krypton. It's not something to set him apart, but to help him remember where he came from. And remember, he does. In issue #2, when this universe's take on Lois Lane, an agent of the Lazarus Corporation, tries to learn more about Superman's reasons for opposing them, he tells her, "This is what Lazarus thinks of us. These people are not your playthings. These are the people of steel." Here, Superman is drawing a connection between the working class of Krypton and the working class of Earth. Their struggle is the same, despite being separated by time and space. And like Yang, Aaron conveys this message by reinterpreting iconic parts of Superman's mythos. I'm not saying that Aaron is purposefully calling back to Yang or Morrison or Siegel or Schuster, but I am saying that there's a through line that connects all of their works. When faced with the question, who is Superman at his core, they all give various interpretations of the same answer. At his core, Superman is both an alien and the most human of all of us. At his core, Superman is someone who is gifted godlike power and uses it not to enrich himself, but to uplift the defenseless. In the end, This is what I think all good Superman stories share, and what makes them all woke. Superman, like all art, is political. In his conception, he's a working-class hero, and over time, good comics have kept this commitment to uplifting the downtrodden. Writers who understand the character of Superman, who understand the appeal of Superman, understand that the power fantasy he offers is to have the compassion to see the world's problems and the strength to fix them. What's central to the character is not the ability to be faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, or able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. What makes Superman iconic, what's kept readers coming back for nearly a century now, is that he has all the power in the world, and he uses it to help others. He chooses to be good. Alright, that's all for this video. If you liked it, go ahead and leave a comment, maybe subscribe, it really helps out the channel. If you didn't like it, go do all that stuff anyway. See ya.